Hi, this is Pat Newton with the North Carolina Forward Party, and yet another response to the Republican debates. Last night was November 8th, 2023, and again, my disclaimer, these are my views personally, not necessarily the views of the Forward Party, but let's dive right in. Going left to right across the stage, we had on the far left Chris Christie, who I think I've shared with you. I lived in New Jersey, probably know Chris Christie and his politics a little better than maybe other parts of the country, because that's where he served as governor. Haven't been overly impressed, haven't necessarily felt like he's the right choice, but I will say last night he certainly gained a few points, at least in my book. He tried to come across as sort of the voice of reason, sort of the adult in the room, if you will. Thought he conducted himself pretty well, and I think he made some pretty good points. So overall, I would say Chris Christie gained some ground again, at least in my record book. Next to Chris Christie was, of course, Nikki Haley, who I've also shared with you is probably my number one pick. I'm giving her serious consideration to receive my vote in the primaries. I don't know if she did herself any favors last night. I thought she was a little, not unglued, but just distracted when Ramaswamy started talking about her daughter and she's making comments under her breath that you're dumb. Not presidential, not the kind of stuff that I'm looking for, but I am still very impressed with her and the things she has to say and her international experience. I think she brings a lot to the table, and I do feel like she's still a strong candidate. So I would say last night, maybe a push, maybe lost a little bit of ground for me personally, but I think overall she certainly held her own. She's been tracking well since the last debate, and I think she'll continue to do so. Next center stage was, of course, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida. I think Ron DeSantis gained a little ground last night. I think he's starting to settle in, starting to look a little more presidential. When he starts sharing examples of things he's done in Florida to directly fix problems or address issues, I got to admit, that resonates with me. That impresses me. It's a real live example of him leading a state, making decisions, implementing policies to improve things for his citizens, and that could translate well into trying to become the leader of the United States. So I think I've shared with you, haven't been super impressed with Ron DeSantis up till now. He's also been on a skid. He's been dropping fairly dramatically, but I think he's sort of leveled off. He's hoping hit bottom and now is going to resurge. I think for Ron DeSantis and all the candidates, frankly, you want to become that 1A. Right now, Trump is number one. Everybody else is scrambling. But if you can get to that spot where you're the next one below Donald Trump and then hope either he implodes or the courts, give him more trouble than he can handle, if he actually becomes a felon, who knows? But all those things are out of the candidate's control. So at this point, I think the battle is to really become that next viable choice for the Republican Party, and then hope and assume that Donald Trump will go away for whatever reasons it ends up being, and then they can snatch the spot and become the candidate for the Republican Party for President of the United States. So again, I think that's probably true for all the candidates, and I think Ron DeSantis specifically probably moved a little better into that strategy, if you will, last night. Now, Mr. Ramaswamy, I was really impressed, not necessarily with the content, but just the strategy. He decided long before that debate started last night, I'm going to get after it. And he did. He attacked the moderators. He attacked Nikki Haley. He attacked DeSantis. He attacked anybody and everybody that he could think of. And I got to admit, I think he brought up some good points. I haven't done any fact checking this morning. But, when he talks about Ukraine, I think he brings up some valid points. I don't think it's necessarily the thriving democracy that our government wants us to believe. And there's probably not a clear black and white, good and evil scenario as much as our government would like us to rally behind that. Now, personally, do I think we need to fend off communism and specifically Russia? Yes. So I stand with Nikki Haley and Chris Christie and others that made that point. But that being said, I think Ramaswamy really brought up some issues and some examples and some data that certainly wouldn't have been brought up if he wasn't on the stage. So I give him credit for that. And again, he went right after the chairperson of the Republican National Committee. He really, really went after it pretty hard. Will it pay off for him? I don't know. I suspect it might. I received some text messages during the debate. Certainly, some of my friends felt like it was impressive for him to make those stands and to go after people. And we'll see if the rest of the electorate, more importantly, the donors and the voters ultimately agree. And we'll be able to see some of that in the next 72 hours. So we'll keep an eye on that. But again, if nothing else, an interesting strategy. And then finally on the far right, Tim Scott, Senator of South Carolina. I think Tim's a good man. I don't know if he's ready to be president of the United States. I think I've said this before. I'd love to see maybe Nikki Haley ticket with Tim Scott as a vice presidential candidate. Although after last night, I started thinking maybe Ron DeSantis for president, Nikki Haley for vice president. I think that could be of interest to a lot of voters, but we'll see how that shakes out. Point is, the stage has got to get smaller. I mean, you've got Donald Trump in one category standing by himself. You got 5 other people battling off to the side. That 5's already dwindled from what it was originally. By the next debate, I think it will be down to probably 3. And at some point, if they start jockeying for presidential and vice presidential ticket ideas, that's when things will really start to shake out. I will say with Tim Scott, I know he's a man of faith, as am I, and as are many of you. But I do think there's a big contingency of voters really want a separation of church and state. I think sometimes he goes to that spiritual Christian well, maybe a little too often for some people's taste. But again, it's the primary, and there are a lot of Christian right voters and organizations that do turn out, that do engage. Most of us don't participate in the primary, which is a travesty. And you can visit Open Primaries, which is an organization, you can find them online, gives some mind-blowing statistics on how important primaries are. In most cases, whoever wins the primary wins the general election, because most districts across the country are gerrymandered. So we already know which party is going to win. So if you can win your primary and you are the party of choice in that district, you're going to win the general election. However, most voters don't participate in the primary, don't bother to be a part of it. And, so the cycle continues. But I'll get off that soapbox for now. But again, I think Tim Scott, I think all of them were really catering, to their base, to the right, to the classic play, but also the classic mistake of politicians. Primary, drift as far extreme as you can to get the base, if you will, and then scramble in the general election to move back towards the center. Has been a problem for a lot of candidates for a long, long time, and I think that'll continue to be the case. The one bright light for me was it seemed like they started to soft pedal on the question of abortion and women's rights to having access to abortion. The elections that took place this week, I think, really said loud and clear that voters, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, believe that women should have the right to make that choice and should have access to safe, legal abortions. What the limit will be, Chris Christie made this point. That's for states to decide. And as a forwardist, we discussed this a lot, but I think it's safe to say the policies and laws that we determined that we want to live by here in North Carolina aren't going to work for the people of New Hampshire or the people of California or the people of Alabama. And that's kind of the point. This idea of coming up with a federal 16-week or whatever they think the magic number is going to be, challenging. I'll leave it at that. But I do think they all certainly showed some signs of starting to accept the fact that most people in this country do want women to have that right and to have safe access to abortions when they choose to make that decision. And I was encouraged by that. I think it's important for Republicans to get off some of these really locked in, strong conservative, no room for discussion or accommodating others. So I felt like all of them collectively, some better than others, but showed that they're willing to move towards the middle and to come up with solutions that address all of our needs. And that's what the Forward Party, for example, is all about. So I was encouraged to see that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the debate. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please visit our website, northcarolinaforwardparty.com, so you can learn more about the work we're doing. We do have a town hall coming up December 7th. We're going to discuss how to have political conversations with your friends and loved ones during the holidays without being at each other's throats. So it's going to be it's a challenge every year for many of us. But in all seriousness, we've got great support from groups like Braver Angels and others providing us with resources. I think if you attend the town hall, you get a lot out of it. And I think you'll enjoy the holidays with your family a lot more if you do attend it. So again, thanks for your time. And again, don't forget to visit our website, northcarolinaforwardparty.com.